Okay, so the Chicago Bears just hit a really unexpected roadblock, but to be honest, I should actually say that the Bears just put roadblocks up for themselves. You can't make this stuff up. Fully self-inflicted, making the easy into just a complicated mess. And there's quite a few of them. George McCaskey, he may have fully torpedoed any hope of bringing in Ben Johnson before the interview process has even happened. And that's with this fumbling of a layup question today. More on that in a minute. Another is a timing constraint that could have fully been avoided. And another really poor personnel decision that was done, plus a lack of decision as well on maybe the most important contract in the building. One more. In general, this easy and clean process, it's now been made, I think it might be hopelessly complicated now. And so the question of the day after listening, have these issues I'm going to talk about, have they already destroyed this coaching search before it's begun? Am I overreacting? I've done that before. I don't know, that might be the case, but just leave it in the comments. So let's get to it here. Now, this comes on a day we should be excited. Top coaching prospect Mike Vrabel, he's coming in tomorrow for an interview. But instead, I'm covering an absolute circus. It was just unveiled today. I got to get to it. And the Bears press conference today didn't make me feel incredibly optimistic on this head coaching search. So previously, you guys know, team president Kevin Warren and GM Ryan Poles, they made it clear that they'd be the main guys involved in this search, with Poles in, well, pole position as the decision maker. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. So what's the worst way to make a decision well? When everything is a panel discussion. Now today, we find out that the days of panel discussions, meddling, general dysfunction, and making huge decisions, it's now being embraced once again and labeled the best course of action. I mean, I try to be optimistic on this channel. You guys know me, but this just this just really annoyed me. This has to be talked about, and I just posted it on you guys can see it. Courtney Cronin just posted this from today's press conference. Here are the people who will be involved in the interview process to find the next Bears head coach. Ryan Poles, Kevin Warren, George McCaskey, fine. Jeff King, Matt Feinstein, Liz Geist. Other sources are adding more people onto the list. Now, I'm not saying that every single one of these people are going to be in on every Zoom call, every meeting with potential candidates, but man, on top of that, Poles said that he's giving assistant general manager Ian Cunningham, he's giving him the freedom to explore potential promotions, open GM spots. If those don't pan out, Cunningham will be a part of the process. So a lot to unpack here. For one, wasn't the reason behind bringing in Kevin Warren partially to help George be more hands off with the team, like the team is in Warren's hands? And who is Liz Geist and why is she involved as a key person? If you guys don't know, she is the Chief Human Resources Officer. I can't make this stuff up. And also, the only other person, I'm talking about Ian Cunningham, the only other guy that should be a big part of this besides Warren and Poles, he appears to be kind of being shown find employment elsewhere, kind of being encouraged to leave the team. And I think that's a really bad move because Cunningham, he's been a huge asset. He should be in the room 100%, and he should be encouraged to stay with the team. Looking at it broad view, Poles did make it clear it was still his decision to make. But the presence of a decision panel makes that super hard to believe. And to me, it just looks like more bureaucratic silliness. And here's another thing. Why are we interviewing 14 candidates plus? As Poles shared, we're going to add some guys who might surprise you. I mean, with the committee now with such a long list, just overcomplicating this. And I can see a situation when we're just sitting back watching key guys getting hired one by one while we're still here in the process. And on top of that, George McCaskey, he just made several absolutely ridiculous statements pertaining to this front office. And these statements, in my opinion, might very well be enough for Ben Johnson to just say, no thanks. And I'm not sure I would blame him. So it appears so far that GM Ryan Poles has not been extended as well. He declined to answer the question during the presser. But when George McCaskey was asked whether this would be an issue when interviewing head coaches, well, here's his answer on whether a lame duck GM is attractive to a head coach. In interviews that I've participated in, he needs to stop participating in interviews, that's never been a factor. No one ever comes in and says, I'm not coming here unless the GM and I are on the same timeline. I don't think that's going to be a factor. Ben Johnson stated over and over that he wanted clarity and communication and alignment between the GM and head coach. Your top candidate literally said that was a deal breaker. The Bears' response: create a big, convoluted, confusing panel discussion search committee to interview with. And then when asked about whether alignment is important, the chairman's response is, I don't believe that's a key factor. I mean, you can't make this up, right? And this was a softball question for McCaskey to let Ben Johnson know everything is together. It was a purposeful, friendly layup question. And this is the response that he gave. And also this hesitancy across the board to make concise, confident, decisive moves with staffing. Either fully support polls with an extension or cut them loose to give candidates a clear vision. It just feels like they're hedging their bets here. So let's get back to Mike Vrabel. My vet is over, but man, it's just frustrating. He's looking to be a pretty sought-after candidate. In my eyes, he'd be the first fallback if Ben Johnson isn't the guy. I think Ben Johnson is still the number one choice. I think he's the best veteran option and still discipline and direction to the team. I think this team needs a lot, right? But to get to him, the Bears would need to move quickly. The Bears are restricted to a preliminary virtual meeting with Johnson on Thursday, with the next one possibly not happening until July 27th. That would be the in-person meetup according to NFL rules, assuming the Lions make the Super Bowl. So that's a pretty long timeline, right? A long wait. Now, if these are in fact the top two choices, and they are by my personal preference, the timeline on the decision is incredibly tight. As I believe Vrabel, he'll be accepting a job before then. I think, in fact, he'll be the first man hired in this coaching cycle. Looks to be a perfect fit in New England, and he's also interviewed with the New York Jets so far. So here's the thing, though. His contract was done with Cleveland last Monday. With this time constraint, why didn't the Bears bring him in sooner? I mean, his contract ended with Cleveland on December 30th. That brings me to a thought of maybe this means the Bears aren't seriously considering Vrabel for the position. That's possible. Or what I think is more likely, it's another mismanaged search. And this meeting with Vrabel could have happened a week ago, and it could have made this timeline a bit easier to deal with. But I think it's because they were think tanking to form a huge search committee once again, delaying getting him in there. And then I'm getting over sickness here. So Ben Johnson, notoriously bad interviewer. That's super concerning on its own. And the Bears are up against a timeline for Vrabel. I don't feel optimistic about this because of today's news on the front office structure at Hallis Hall regarding the search committee and making a quick decision. It's now going to be like turning a cruise ship now. And is it really necessary to interview 14 candidates just so you know that you've done the process? So now what we're looking at, weird interview process, avoidable time crunch, an unnecessarily unclear future presented at the GM position. The only possibility on the GM, possibly going to hire the coach, then give Poles a contract that matches the same time frame. I mean, that's possible. But all this nonsense, you guys, it just might be all that's needed to push Johnson in New England or just have him stay in Detroit. Jacksonville, I think, is doubtful as a landing spot. Their GM that they kept is very undesirable to Johnson. This was a two-team race, and the Bears, I think they just sabotaged themselves. And New England really loves Vrabel. Let's see what happens. But man, not a good look so far coming from Hallis Hall. Just really poor messaging. Let's hope this all works out with two of the most important interviews happening tomorrow with Vrabel and immediately following that, Ben Johnson. Thanks for bearing with me. My voice is not what it should be. Bear down, you guys. Let's try to enjoy this coaching cycle, this hiring process, and I'll be here with daily breakdowns. See you later.